Hello, critters. My name is Claire Jones, and I am the devoted host of the Sacred Reading CR podcast, where we examine and discuss Critical Role plot lines, episodes, and characters through the lens of sacred reading practices. So this particular episode is about Campaign 1, Episode 6, I believe, Part 1. And joining me today is Alyssa. She's back. Hello.
Hello. Oh, it's going good. I'm happy to be back here. That was apparently very hard to say.
No worries. I mean, we record these on Friday afternoons, and so my brain is like halfway out of my head already by the time we start. So
same.
This is a judgment-free zone.
That's good.
Yeah. So please join us as we embark on this adventure in story analysis and self-reflection in order to deepen our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. And as always, we love hearing from you and your own insights and stories as well. So please comment, like, and subscribe on YouTube. So ready? All right, let's dive in. So as we start this episode, Vox Machina have just found themselves very far underneath the Craghammer mines after having fought through a Duragar war camp and explored the tunnel that exited from the bottom or at the bottom of the same large cavern that they had found previously. When I was writing that sentence, I thought about it way too long because I was like, how do I communicate in one sentence that they ended up in the same place where they were already?
They went in a circle.
They went in a circle. They have now chosen to explore the more lava-filled tunnel, hoping it will direct them to the Emberhold, where the Duragar king supposedly has imprisoned their ally, Kima. So they decide to take a short rest to heal up a bit before pushing into the tunnel further. Scanlan flirts with Pike a little bit as the temperature rises, but they continue on for a while, avoiding the lava as much as possible, and Tiberius shows off his fancy magic bottles. Vex rolls a tracking check to scope things out and discovers that the tunnel has a lot of footsteps, including many Duragar, trolls, ogres, and other evidence of caved-in areas from tunneling. The next closest group that she senses is about 3 miles in front of them, so they continue stealthily until they come upon a massive curved cavern. It is lit with lava falls that are pouring down the side of a huge stone fortress, and it is surrounded by what looks like another war camp with tall black stone watchtowers that are being guarded by Duragar with ballista. It all matches what Pike had seen in her vision, where King Marigold, is it Mare-a-Gold or is it just Mare-Gold?
I don't know. I think it was pronounced 4 different ways during the episode and I gave up.
Okay, it's going to be Marigold for our purposes. And he has apparently imprisoned Kima in his fortress. And they have been told that there is a trapdoor into the stronghold hidden underneath one of the lava flows. So Keyleth casts Pass Without a Trace on the group, and they sneak over to where they think it will be. Vex and Vax go check it out first, but they come across a dozen or more patrolling Duragar guards. They overhear some talk about something that took out an entire patrolling party and disgruntled complaints about Kavarn not protecting the Duragar adequately. They return to the group and tell them about what they have found, so they take the long route around to avoid the fight. Vex spies a crimson tower that is different than the rest, so she goes to check it out with Vax. Scanlan tries to join them, but rolls a 1 on his stealth roll, and hilarity ensues. But they find that the crimson on the tower is actually blood with a lot of strewn body parts and evidence of battle. There are some very strange footprints, and Vex seems to think that it's from one of Kavarn's stitched together monstrosities that they've been seeing so far. Vex judges that it probably happened within the previous week, and Vax grabs an errant arm to bring back to the group for fun. Vex loots, of course, and finds some gems. They head back to the group, discuss what they found, and continue looking for the hidden door. When they get to be about a quarter of a mile away, they see a figure of a person standing ahead of them. Scanlan polymorphs into a fly to check it out to see that it is a petrified mind flayer completely turned to stone. He comes back and informs the group, so Clarota, their friendly neighborhood mind flayer, tells them about how the Duragar sometimes have a pet creature that has sight-based petrification abilities. Once they approach the statue, Clarota identifies the mind flayer as one he had met before. They continue on and the twins scurry ahead to inspect the lava flow, looking for a way to access the hidden door. They also see 2 Duergar guards patrolling around the top of the wall. Keyleth hatches a plan to use her stone shaping ability to part the lava flow, but they want to take out the guards first. So Scanlan comes up with a very cavalier plan in classic Scanlan fashion to dimension door himself and Pike up to both of the guards by themselves. And they land in the middle between them. Scanlan casts Thunderwave at both of them. They both get slammed and fall off the wall. So Pike tells Scanlan how hot it was, but still refuses to kiss him. The Duergar both hit the ground. Grog promptly attacks and kills one of them while Keyleth runs up and pushes the other one into the lava. Vex/Laura, I'm thinking this was more Laura than Vex, reminds Keyleth/Marisha of when she killed a kid once pre-stream, and she complains. He screams in agony until Keyleth uses her wind wall to push him even further down into the lava with unusually brutal force, unlike her usual demeanor. A couple of Duergar guards are called by the thunder and screaming, so Scanlan and Pike dimension door off the wall, and Keyleth casts Stonewall to part the lava flow. They yell at Tiberius to do something, who was sitting around and reading his book. He inspects the hidden door while the Duergar guards attack them from above. Percy shoots back. Vex kills one with arrows, and then Vax uses his lockpicks to open the door. Pike tries to take out the remaining Duergar with her spiritual weapon, very creatively, but fails. So Scanlan casts an unseen servant, also very creatively, but fails. Vex shoots an arrow and hits, but the Duergar shoots right back with their crossbow and misses. Percy shoots again, successfully killing them off, while Vax successfully opens the hidden door. They find a musty storage room inside with a stairwell curving upward, and that's where they break for the episode. So, what do we think about this part of the campaign?
I think that the first half of this episode feels like a lot of filler, a lot of setup, not a whole lot to dig into. But that just means that there's more to happen later. And I really love the second half of this episode, but the first half really isn't the most exciting we've ever had.
Yeah, I think we've gotten used to having a consistent fighting schedule or like rhythm throughout these episodes. And I think this is the first, at least half episode, where we don't see a major combat scene.
Yeah, we're not starting off with coming back on a cliffhanger. We're coming back on basically a rest and starting up, which definitely happens, but it's a little harder to, get into the rhythm this time around.
Yeah. I mean, I think Matt does a really good job of trying to place enough combat scenarios throughout their adventures, but I could also see how he was grappling with the Duergar war camp that they, fought through and then ended up in the same place where they were previously. Like they could have completely skipped that whole thing. And I think Matt had to weigh those options. Is are they just going to skip it and go through the lava tunnel and have fights down there? Or are they going to, go through this long convoluted route?
Right. I kind of think he needed a chance to plan something after they went in a circle. Yeah. Okay, that didn't go quite how I expected. Let's, rethink this a little bit. But also with Sam being gone last episode, it might have been let's just move on for now.
Yeah.
And I think that's fair.
Yeah, and I'm also wondering how much of it was contributed to the whole Trinket situation too. Because Trinket had to be left behind because Laura wasn't present at that moment. And Trinket would have just ended up, hanging out in the mines by himself indefinitely if they never went back for him.
Yeah, and I don't think that would have gone over well somehow.
No.
Yeah. No, I think there were a lot of mitigating factors that kind of brought us to where we started with this episode. And, it's understandable and it makes sense, but it's not exciting.
Yeah. So that being said, any allegories, stories, images, metaphors?
Um, I think the biggest thing I was noticing was that they're really just having to trust a bunch of people they don't. They're
Mm,
having to work off of information that they just have to hope is correct.
mm,
Uh, and that's something that they're not as uncomfortable with as I would be.
mm.
So I was noticing a lot of, you know, just accepting the fact that they're working off of information that comes from questionable places. And there's a lot packed into that I didn't really have time to think about where it's coming from, but I'm a little curious.
Mhm. Yeah, like it was an interesting narrative move for Matt as well to include that Pike vision that is
Mhm.
really guiding and validating their path inward. And I wonder what exactly went into that decision for Matt,
Yeah, maybe something special for Ashley as a player because she'd been out.
Totally.
But also maybe some way to validate all of this questionable information and try to head off the inter-party discussion that can drag on. I don't know.
Yeah. One thing that I noticed that I just wanted to slip in real fast, it wasn't really like a thematic element, but before the episode started in their announcements section, they announced their very first fan designed shirt.
Yeah.
And it's like the beginning of their merchandise arc. And like I had forgotten that about this episode. Like this is episode 6 for them. So they've gone about like a month and a half into this stream so far. And they're just started really involving the fan community in this because they went to like an event over the weekend and there were fans there who had made shirts for them. And so then they took that idea and ran with it essentially. And I think they do an original run of like 100 shirts and they like sell out within like 5 minutes.
I don't even think it was 5 minutes. I don't think they made it to the end of the announcement.
Yeah. And I also really loved seeing it was Marisha spearheading that announcement as well. And it's like really her beginnings in becoming this like kick-ass content creative director that she is now today.
Yeah.
And I really loved seeing that.
Yeah, I love seeing them as, kind of babies essentially, where they're, we'll only do it if you want it, or,
Totally.
they're still eating at the table, which doesn't last very long.
No, it doesn't.
Which, to be fair, I'm kind of glad it doesn't last very long.
Yeah.
But it's fun to see the beginnings, and Keyleth messing up Vex and Vax, which they've been doing this for 2 years. She should know by now.
I know.
But considering how much of a problem that still is for everybody in the world, it's kind of fun to see them do it too.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into my other thing that I noticed is like character relationship dynamics. Like they are getting much more comfortable with role-playing relationship dynamics in the group. And whether this is because of the stream and its success or whether it existed pre-stream, like we'll never know. But I'm wondering how much of their comfort levels and enthusiasm with character nuances was influenced by this like nearly instant validation that they received from their audiences.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid question. And I think whether or not it existed pre-stream, it's a very different thing to do it in front of a camera. And so, they probably have a shortcut to it in that they are already actors of a kind. They're voice actors. They make public appearances. They always have.
Yeah.
So I think they became comfortable with it a lot faster than I would have. But, that's something that definitely had to have taken some getting used to really put yourself out there in that kind of vulnerable way.
Yeah, and I really think we see this in the first half of this episode is like their confidence in role playing these dynamics. Like one, we see Laura and Liam arguing like siblings, like not Vex and Vax, but Laura and Liam arguing like siblings during the game. And then we also see Scanlan or Sam, who has been absent. I think it was one game or 2 games. I forget at this point.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I know it was 1. I don't remember if it was 2.
Yeah. And so in this episode, he is now demanding to know what the plan is, like every 10 minutes. Like every step of the way that he's like, what's the plan now? What's the plan now?
That's also partially just how Sam is.
Yeah.
But definitely augmented by the fact that he missed everything last time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it really enhances the Tiberius and Scanlan dynamic as well.
Okay.
And like the Orion and Sam dynamic as well. Like we were talking about this in the last episode. It's like, this is where we start seeing like little tiny glimpses of the conflict between the players and the characters. And this entire episode, Orion and Sam are just ribbing each other.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure it's good-natured either.
I think it would be a stretch to call it good-natured. I think at best it's neutral, but yeah, those two sitting next to each other is interesting.
I love watching their body language. Like I love watching that table in particular when it comes to body language, because like they're all very comfortable in their ability to take up space, like the players individually.
Yeah.
Like Talison's really confident, Marisha's very confident, Orion's very confident, Sam's very confident. And so there's a lot of like elbows that go on on that table.
That's very true. And it's not just like physical space either. They like lean into each other when they're, checking each other. Like, hey, this is my space right now. They make those physical movements to like get into each other's space and kind of like assert themselves.
Yeah, and I really see that dynamic between Sam and Orion, especially. Like Sam's always like really upfront with his body language, whereas Orion tends to sit back. But every time they clash, Orion like gets right up in Sam's face.
Yeah. Knowing how that turns out is very interesting to watch and easy to catch. Yeah,
it is. Like now that you know what happens. And I think Tiberius and Orion is also starting to really lean into his more antisocial tendencies, like reading his book while everyone else is trying to figure out Lavador. Like he mentions it multiple times throughout their initiative roles that he's just sitting there reading a book, ignoring everyone.
And he interrupts to do it. Like it is very important that we know that he does not care and that he is not involved.
Yeah. And I'm wondering like how much of that is influenced by their now like near instant validation with their audiences. Like, did they enhance those particular character tendencies in response to the audience,
Yeah. I don't know. I know that they definitely built out their characters in response to the stories they were telling and in response to having an audience that wanted to know more. I don't know how much that played into in-game interactions this early, but it's interesting to think about. I'd be curious to kind of pay more attention to it.
And like we also see a lot of cute Scanlan and Pike banter in this episode, like with Ashley actually being there, we just see it a lot more than we did at the beginning. And I don't know if they're like making up for lost time or whether this is just like the average amount of banter that they usually have going on.
I think one thing is Ashley's always been vocal about the fact that she's a bit of a hermit. She's not out there as much. So they make an effort to pull her in, and it's something they do really well. And it happens every time she comes back to the table. And I think that's why she works so well with the party, and why the dynamic changes so much when she's there, is they're actively trying to pull her in. They're trying to bring her into conversations, into role play moments, big and little things, to make sure she's an active part of the story. And they're doing it because they know that their friend needs that in order to be comfortable at the table. So I think a lot of the banter that happens with Pike and Scanlan is Sam, as a very confident, very outgoing person, knowing he has this dynamic with Pike and can pull her into a conversation easily.
Totally. And like, we see Sam's depth of empathy in that. And while he tries to mask it with Scanlan's, flippant, charming persona, it's still there.
Yeah.
It's still there. He's a deep soul.
He is.
Mr. Shorthalt. And then we also see a Vex and Percy moment as well. Vex/Laura says, "That's badass, Percy," when he kills one of the Durgar with his bad news gun. And the way she says it was really interesting, because it's not in a Vex accent. But she does say, "That's badass, Percy."
I had not noticed that the accent slipped.
The accent slipped.
Yeah.
She still said Percy. And so I was like, is that Laura talking to Percy? Or is that Vex talking to Percy?
A little bit of both.
Yeah. And it was like a very subtle aside too. I almost missed it, but then I rewinded and I was like, wait, what did she say?
Yeah, I watched with the subtitles on most of the time, because I miss a lot of the crosstalk. And in these early episodes, there's a lot of crosstalk. They have a lot of little asides, a lot of conversations going on at the same time. So the subtitles come in so handy. I also read through the transcripts because I just miss all of that stuff. Yeah. So I had no clue that the accent slipped, because I only caught it via written word.
It did not come through on the captions.
No, but that actually is really interesting. I love seeing the early plays of their dynamic. Vex and Percy are some of my favorite people to play off of each other. So that's really cool.
I'm a Persalia stand.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. And so that's really the themes that I noticed in this first half, was the development of character relationship dynamics and those nuances within the group. It's just really fascinating. And I think what we were talking about at the beginning is we had this gap in action, and so it got filled with character dynamics more so.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see.
And that's something that they carry through. They start giving the character dynamics more room to breathe. And I think that's really something that starts around here, where they start to build those relationships to a point where they want to develop them.
Exactly.
So it's good to start seeing it. It was a little rough this first time. It's a little hard to watch. Yeah. And, but it's good to see it begin, because it becomes a big part of who they are as a campaign. It's going on through all three campaigns.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So what kind of personal experiences are coming to mind for us?
I think the biggest one for me was family reunions, having that kind of coming back to old relationships and figuring out where people stand. It reminded me of getting back into a room with everybody after the pandemic, and finally, it's these people that I know well, but I'm finding new ways to relate to them and new ways to interact with them, and kind of building on relationships that already exist but are totally different now than they were 2.5 years ago or whatever last time I saw people. And this whole first half kind of felt like that, family but different kind of dynamic. And it was something I really related to and did enjoy, because it was so similar to that feeling of figuring out who people are a little bit later or in a different situation.
Yeah, I love that analogy. I mean, that touches on what I was thinking about too, like in terms of community. Like more and more I'm realizing that the themes that I'm finding in these early episodes time and time again are related back to their growth as professionals, just as much, if not more so, than their growth as characters. Like that's really what has been fascinating me so far. Like now that we're in episode 10 of this podcast, like those are the themes that keep popping up to me over and over again. And maybe it's where I am in life right now. I mean, I've been viewing the series through the lens of professional development, just because of that's where my life is currently. And whereas with other times in my life, I may have looked through more of the lens of romance or fantasy or storytelling. You know, I would have come to it with a different lens. And it really makes me think about the importance of communities that acknowledge and validate your interests. Like we see this with their audiences, but we also see it within the group itself, is like how important that validation is and how that contributes to the overall growth and confidence of both you and the people in the community together. Like, for example, I've actually found the community of Booktalk this year. I don't know, as a librarian, I don't know how often you spent in Booktalk world.
Not much, but enough.
Yeah. And I just recently discovered it back in January, and it's been about 4 months now. And I just have absolutely loved the community on Booktalk, because I spent so many years not having anyone to really talk to about all of the books that I was reading. Like I was an only child. I spent a lot of time alone. I'm naturally an introvert. And so I just didn't really think about creating communities around these passions and interests and just topics that I have on the front of my mind. And now that I've found Booktalk, it's been incredibly gratifying.
Sounds like it. Yeah, I mean, Critical Role was that way for me for a lot of ways. Like,
totally.
I didn't, finding the critter fandom, it was finally a place to talk about all of the nerdy interests that, nobody around me actually gets. And that was a huge thing for me. And it was a great way to build a community that I never would have had before. And it's been really great over the last couple of years of doing this, to build on that and to build friendships. And it sounds like a very similar kind of experience.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, Critical Role did that for me as well. I have not been as involved in the community as I've been wanting to in the past. And like, that was kind of the purpose of this podcast in the first place. I was like, I want to talk to other people and nerd out about Critical Role on a public platform. Like one of my aha moments was actually right at the beginning of campaign 3 last year. And I made a Tumblr post about how Laudna's character reminded me of the crone, like the Virgin, the mother of the crone, witchcraft, and how Marisha may have intentionally created this character as the crone to like show how the crone is misjudged by society, but as at the end of the day, a very valuable ally and person to have.
Yeah.
And so I like wrote this whole like post, and I was like, in this essay, I will Laudna, crone, and I like left like an ellipses at the end of it because like I didn't really want to write the essay.
Right.
And I had several people comment on it and be like, OP, where's the essay? I'm like, I'm not gonna sit down and write an essay for you guys. Like, that was one of the turning points where I like saw this community and I was like, oh, I need to get more involved with you guys.
Yeah, I think my big entry into it was I wrote a post about Yasha right around the time that she came back like permanently after Blind Spot ended, and it blew up. And it was one of those things where I love Yasha. She's one of my favorite characters. And I got to talk about her, and all of a sudden all these people were super interested in what I had to say. And it was really validating
Yeah.
and kind of fantastic. And it got me into the community in a lot bigger way than I was ever planning on.
Yeah. I mean, the importance of community is just, I cannot state it enough. Like, you need to have these people around you who validate and encourage and acknowledge and commiserate and, mourn with you, joy with you, have amazing revelatory experiences with you.
Yeah.
It's just super important. So what actions are we being called to take?
I think the thing that stood out to me, and this came more from our discussion than the actual episode, but it's to give yourself some space to grow, some space to breathe, and to just trust sometimes that is what you actually need to be doing. Not rushing off to the next thing, just taking the time to live in the moment that you're in and appreciate the people who are around you in that moment.
I love that. I actually have a tattoo on my wrist that says now.
Nice.
And that's my reminder to do that. Because I get so caught into like what's coming down the road.
Yeah.
That I don't really spend the time in the now and the here with the people around me, with the things around me. And so I absolutely love that for you.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just being called to continue embracing my interests and passions and nerd zones in my communities, both online and off. Like, Booktalk has really kind of broken me out of my shell when it comes to that. Like, Tumblr, I didn't really post a lot of opinions on because like there were so many opinions already on it that I was mostly just like absorbing opinions.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But with Booktalk, I'm like, all right, let's talk about this.
Yeah, I think that's also very important and a good takeaway.
Yeah, I mean, we need these welcoming platforms where we can just show up as our full authentic selves in all of the nerd zones that we have, because everyone has a nerd zone. Like, I had a friend I had a friend in college who actually got really annoyed at me calling all of us nerds. She's like, I'm not a nerd, I'm cool. I was like, dude, like, you go off on tangents about like Victorian age children books. Like,
everybody is a nerd about something.
Yeah, like, you're a nerd about something, but that doesn't mean like you're uncool. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Nerds unite. Moral
always.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've been called to do and called to take away from all of this.
Yeah, I think that's a good direction to go.
Well, anything else we want to add before we wrap up for the day?
I don't think so. I'm very excited for the back half of this episode because I know who's showing up.
Yeah. Campaign 1 really is, so far, I don't know about campaign 3, but campaign 1 right now has the title of best guest characters and NPCs and non-player characters that just take the campaign to another level, really.
I have to agree wholeheartedly. All of my favorite NPCs are from campaign 1.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about it.
Like, I love Robbie, I love Dorian, but they need more time in campaign 3 to really hit the level of campaign 1.
Yeah, I think campaign 3 so far is good, but we're at the very beginning of it, and I'm, kind of holding off judgment until we really see it hit its stride.
Yeah. I mean, I've honestly been having a bit of a trouble getting into campaign 3. I'm not gonna lie. Like, there's no one character that I really resonate with so far. Like, I find them all amusing and I love them all, but I've been challenged by getting into it.
I mean, I'm 3 episodes behind right now, so yeah, kind of similar. I love them. I'm having fun with it, but I'm not like, I'm going to watch this with my Friday. kind of invested like I was with campaign 1 and 2.
Yeah, I mean, I still miss Jester with all of my heart and Kate, and I will always be a Widow Jest stan to this day.
If that's what works for you, great.
I mean, I loved Shadowgast as well. That was perfection, but
yeah, I don't know. Bo and Yasha were my ship for campaign 2, but every time it goes back to Versalia. They are my, diehard.
OG.
Yep, gotta go with them every time.
Oh, the darlings haven't even come into play yet.
There's so much to look forward to.
So much to look forward to. All right, well, let's wrap up with that. And that was just a huge cliffhanger for part 2 for next time. So yeah, as always, these are powerful themes that we're talking about here. And audience, we definitely encourage you to share your own thoughts and feelings and stories and insights with us as well. We'd love to know how Critical Role and the community of critters have impacted you in your own lives. And special thanks to Alyssa again for joining me on this episode. It has been an absolute pleasure, per usual.
Yeah, I was very happy to be back. I had fun with this, as usual.
And yeah, so next time we'll be discussing campaign 1 episode 6 part 2, and joining me again will be Alyssa, and I'm super excited to dive into it with her. And I'm always looking for more co-hosts and guests, so if you're interested in coming on this podcast and sharing your perspectives, please reach out to me via email or on Tumblr, and I'll send you the sign-up form. I can't wait to chat with you all. In the meantime, please comment, like, and subscribe below. Follow us on Tumblr at Sacred Reading CR for all the juicy updates. And until next time, may all beings be peaceful, may all beings be free, and always, always, always remember to love each other. Take care, guys.
Bye.